Hi everyone, today we have a new video. It's comparing both the Poco M4 Pro and of course the Poco X4 Pro 5G, comparing how they both perform in daytime when it comes to the camera. Either way, let's jump into the video, and of course, if you do like the video, don't forget to like and leave a comment below. I do like that. Either way, let's jump into comparing. Let's begin with the Poco M4 Pro, the cheaper but still on paper a very capable camera setup for this price range. The main sensor, let's start here. It's a 64 megapixel sensor with a 1.8 aperture, where the Ultrawide is an 8 megapixel sensor with a 2.2 aperture and a 118 degree field of view. We have a third sensor, but that's a 2 megapixel sensor, but I find these not interesting because of the low resolution, so I won't show any of them on both of these devices. For the Poco X4 Pro 5G, we almost carry the same system. The main sensor for the Poco X4 Pro 5G is however a 108 megapixel sensor with a 1.8 aperture and a sensor with 1/1.53 inch in terms of sensor size. The Ultrawide is an 8 megapixel sensor with a 2.2 aperture and of course 118 degree field of view as well. Now of course, one last thing that also matters when it comes to photography, especially with phones, is the CPU, because these help taking shots. For the Poco M4 Pro, it comes with a MediaTek Helio G96, where the Poco X4 Pro 5G comes with the Snapdragon 695. So let's start comparing these shots and see how both of them perform. Now when it comes to this comparison, sometimes I will comment on an image and sometimes I will just play a little bit of music and showcase you what the difference is between them and let you judge for yourself. But here is the first shot and you can see a clear difference between the two. You can tell, for instance, that there's a very different approach to both of them. The Poco X4 Pro 5G has more contrast to the shot and that makes the subject stand out more. Also the depth of field is a little bit more effective. But the Poco M4 Pro goes for a more natural approach and a bit more subtle shot. Here again with this tree you can see that there is more contrast on the Poco X4 Pro, but you can also see a little bit more details as well and of course a great depth of field. Now here both shots are fairly close to each other, but there is still something I want to discuss. For instance, you can tell that there is a slight difference in color, mostly noticeable in the green. Not much. Both I think do capture quite a decent amount of detail, but it is noticeable that the Poco M4 Pro does oversharpen a little bit. Now with this next one there are some more differences. Some differences, for instance in color again, with the Poco M4 Pro looking warmer, where the Poco X4 Pro 5G looking slightly brighter as well and a bit more saturation to the greens here. Overall though, both again managed to capture a solid amount of detail, though the Poco M4 Pro does make a part of the building looks like it's standing out more, a little bit more detailed because of that sharpening. It's something that you either like or dislike, but either way, that's something that you definitely notice when it comes to both of these shots. Now this is the biggest difference in color. Here again you can see that more yellow approach for the Poco M4 Pro, which makes the shot look warmer, and without a doubt it looks more like the Poco X4 Pro 5G here, and I would have to say that I prefer that shot as well. But again, separation of parts of the buildings is really well done with the Poco M4 Pro because of that sharpening. Again though, you either like it or dislike it. If you want something that looks more separated and looks less natural, if that makes sense, I would say that the Poco M4 Pro does it a little bit better because you can distinguish parts of the building a little bit better because of that sharpening that is going on with the Poco M4 Pro. And this more yellow approach you will see in more shots that I've taken with both of these devices. If you want a more natural approach, without a doubt I think that the Poco X4 Pro 5G comes pretty close to reality, including the softness of it. With the Poco M4 Pro sometimes it can make it a little bit too sharp. While it allows for parts to be more separated and stand out more because of it, the Poco X4 Pro 5G simply captures more to what I prefer, the more natural and a bit softer kind of image. Now I will have to say, one of the nicest subjects to shoot in my city, which is the city of Arnhem, is the church. It has a lot of detail and it's just a subject that I love to photograph. Funny enough, remember that more yellow approach for the M4 Pro, so the warmer approach? Well here it is switched around. The Poco X4 Pro 5G goes for the more yellow, warmer look. And here I also think that the sharpening on the Poco M4 Pro does help with the overall shot, because it does allow more break details to stand out. Even though it's not natural enough, I do think it helps the subject stand out more. Well, in general, I prefer a bit more of a softer look, as I said before. Here, I think that the Poco M4 Pro looks a little bit better, while also looking like the Poco X4 Pro 5G has some part with too much brightness. So in general, I will have to say both of them with their main sensors for the price are really solid. And before we start the video, we of course have Ultrawide, and here you can see a pretty similar approach to what you saw in terms of difference between the main sensor of both of them as well. Some warmer tones for the M4 Pro and of course some sharpening, where of course the X4 Pro 5G does look a bit softer and of course a slightly bit more saturation depending on the situation as well. Either way, these are the differences between the Ultrawide before we check out some more shots and after that video recording. Now, as stated at the beginning of the video, there is a difference in resolution, so I quickly want to compare both of them as well. We have a 64 megapixel sensor on the Poco M4 Pro with a 108 megapixel sensor on of course the Poco X4 Pro 5G. So here are some differences between both of them. So this was the daytime comparison between both the Poco M4 Pro and of course the Poco X4 Pro 5G. Both solid phones for the price, and I think it's impressive that they both do pretty solid here. If I were have to say something though, is that the Poco M4 Pro, as stated, sometimes does too much with sharpening. And for both of them I would have liked a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor and of course a little bump up in terms of sensor size as well. Overall though, if you are going for a budget like this, both are stellar packages with their display, battery life and general performance, and of course camera as well. But for that, I will have to say stay tuned, because of course more comparisons are coming as well, and of course a full review for both of them. Hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to of course drop a like and comment below as well, which is very much appreciated to interact with people as well, and it does definitely help out the video performance as well. And of course, if you really like this video, don't forget to subscribe and get me to that 1K of course. Either way, have a good one and talk to you guys in the next.